Hey, it's Michelle. Welcome to my first video. I'm super excited to make this video because, as you can probably tell from the title, I passed my NCLEX, which I wrote for the first time on July 20th, 2021. And I passed it with a minimum of 75 questions. And so I thought I'd make this video to share with you guys kind of how I studied for it, how I prepared for it, and hopefully that would help with your studying as well. Okay, so first let's start with a little timeline of my schedule. So I finished my last final on April 23rd, 2021. And then right after I finished my last final, I wanted to get started on studying for the NCLEX as soon as possible because I didn't know when I would get my ATT, which is the authorization to test. And so I didn't know when I would be able to book my NCLEX and take it. And so I wanted to get started as soon as possible, just in case I had to take the NCLEX sooner than I expected. So I bought UWorld, the 60-day package, on April 26th. Now later on in the video, I explain more about the impact of UWorld and how I used it and stuff. And then once I bought UWorld on April 26th, really soon, on May 10th, I received my ATT, and I decided to book my NCLEX for July 20th. So to be honest, I was actually hoping to take the NCLEX within the first week of July, but July 20th was the earliest date in July that my test center had available for us. And so I kind of just had to roll with that. So that means that I prepared for the NCLEX from April 26th till July 20th. So that's about 84 days. But the thing is, obviously I didn't study for all of the 84 days. I definitely took some days off. But the thing is, I feel that the 84 days was a little bit too long. I felt ready after I had completed the 2,000-something questions on UWorld. I felt ready to take the test. So after about 2 months of studying, which I think is what I would recommend for other test takers. So now I'll talk about the 3 resources that I used to study for the NCLEX. So yeah, let's start with the first one, UWorld. I bought the 60-day access pass, and it included 2,193 questions along with 1 self-assessment, which was 100 questions. So really, UWorld gets the most credit for my pass. I honestly think that it's one of the best resources for NCLEX prep out there. So I highly recommend UWorld. I'll go more into detail about how I use this material later on, but just UWorld. The second resource I used were the Klimek lectures. I listened to them on Spotify, but I've included the links for those YouTube videos and the free notes below. So the 4 that I did listen to were the first, so acid-base principles, the second, alcohol, the third, cardiac and farm, and the 4th, which was actually the last lecture that he gave, the 12th lecture. I listened to the prioritization half of that lecture.
Now, the reason why I didn't listen to all of his lectures was because I felt this constant pressure to double check everything that he was saying, because those lectures are from quite a few years ago. I think they were from 2003 or something. So because of this constant need to double check, it was quite time consuming. So eventually I just decided to stop listening to his lectures and instead focus on answering UWorld questions and the YouTube videos as review.
But one really important thing that I learned from Klimek that I do want to share with you guys is his message, which is you don't have to know everything. You just have to know enough to pass the test. NCLEX is a entry nursing exam that tests basic nursing knowledge. So really, whenever I feel stressed, I just think about his message, and I'm like, okay, as long as you know the basics, you'll pass. And yeah, just wanted to share that with you guys because I think it's something that will really, help with your mindset going into the exam. Now, next are the 6 really helpful YouTube videos. So I rewatched these over and over and over, and I also took notes on all of these. So the first is Nurse Sarah's Lab Values NCLEX Review. Oh my gosh, guys, highly recommend. Seriously, go watch this video. I memorized all the lab values that she listed. They're super current and just amazing. Watch this video. The next are Mint Nursing's 4 videos. So ECG interpretation, heart blocks interpretation, PVC interpretation, AFib, and a flutter interpretation. I highly recommend these videos. After watching them, I felt a lot more confident doing questions about ECGs, and I was getting a lot more right. Last video I want to recommend is the Infant Developmental Milestones video by Underground Med. So if you're like me where you have a hard time remembering the infant developmental milestones, really watch this video, because what she does is she narrows it down to 4 major things you have to know for each of the month categories. So like 2 months, 4 months, 6 months, blah, 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 so on. And just super clear. She draws pictures too. So highly recommend that as well.
Now, the last resource I do want to talk about is this book, the Saunders NCLEX review book. Now, the thing is, I bought the book, but I didn't actually use it that much. And the reason is because it's just so thick. That's kind of daunting. And so I just decided to instead focus on doing UWorld questions and also like watching YouTube videos for review.
So here's my study plan for May, June, and July. I stuck more or less to this plan, but of course, like I was usually 1 or 2 days behind always, because like life happens. Now I started with UWorld. I tried to do about 35 to 50 questions a day. Usually I'm at this target, but again, not all the time. I decided to attack the questions based on lifespan. Now, I started with maternal newborn, then child health, adult health, critical care, and mental health. But then after mental health, I didn't really follow the plan, because by the time I had finished those questions, I just felt really tired of following that routine. To try to keep it fresh, I decided to mix pharmacology, fundamentals, and leadership questions in the last few weeks just to get a change of rhythm. And so, for instance, I would do some pharm in the morning, some like leadership in the afternoon, and then tomorrow I'll do some fundamentals. So I mixed it up so I wasn't doing like hundreds of questions of each topic in chunks like I was doing before. And I found that this really helped me to like stay motivated during the studying process. So my tip to you is to try doing something similar if you feel yourself starting to get burnt out from your usual routine. Another key thing that I really want to mention about UWorld is that I did not take any notes when I was doing the UWorld questions, the 2,000 something questions, because I knew that I wouldn't actually reread them, and so like there was really no point in doing that. And also I wanted to finish all the questions as soon as possible. So how I really studied using the UWorld questions was I did all the questions on tutor mode, and I read every single rationale, because just there's so much information there that I think it's enough for the NCLEX. And what you'll find as you do more and more of the UWorld questions is that you get used to its testing style, first of all. And you'll also notice that the questions ask about similar, like they repeatedly ask about one disease or like a certain treatment or a certain nursing intervention. And you kind of start to pick up on that. If I get started on, say, like the maternal health questions, for like the first 20 some questions, I would have to Google to get the right answer. But then after about answering 20 some questions, say on question 25, then I would be able to apply the knowledge that I had learned from answering those questions and reading those rationales to answer question 25 about, say, like the signs and symptoms of ectopic pregnancy. By that point, I would no longer need to Google. Yeah, it was the strategy that I used when answering all of the UWorld questions, and I found that it was the most efficient for me to get through the questions. And so my final score on UWorld was 68%, which was the 95th rank. And once I finished the questions, I took a break for a week to re-energize, and during that time, I didn't study at all. And I found that that was really important for my well-being and just being able to kind of relax. After that week of relaxation, I watched those YouTube videos to focus on my weak points. So that goes back to another really good thing about UWorld, is that after you do all of their 2,000 something questions, they send you this little report of like what you scored in all the categories and all the body systems and stuff, so that you knew like where your weak points were and where you needed to focus more on. So based on that report, I decided what YouTube videos to watch. Then a week before my test date, I took the UWorld self-assessment, and I got a high chance of passing. Woohoo! And yeah, this really increased my confidence going into the exam, just having that knowledge that, you know, I have a high chance of passing. And so I would highly recommend getting at least one self-assessment that you can do closer to the date of your exam, just to affirm your confidence. After I took the self-assessment, I used those questions as a review guide, and also like the notes I took with the YouTube videos as this giant review guide, which I used to study until the day of my exam. I know a lot of people say not to study the day before your exam, but personally I did. And the reason is because I didn't feel nervous or anything. I felt very calm and comfortable. So I didn't feel that there was any reason for me not to review the day before my exam. So yeah, I think it's really just a personal preference kind of thing. So now I want to touch on test day. So on the day of the exam, I got my dad to drive me to the testing center. And the reason was because I felt a little bit too nervous to drive. But on the drive there, like, I practiced deep breathing and just, you know, calming thoughts and stuff. And then looking out the window, stuff like that, to just really get into the mindset of like a steady and calm person, really, to take the exam. And then what I did bring to the exam were, I brought my ID. I didn't bring my phone though, because I just didn't, you know, you can't really use it in there anyways, and my dad was gonna pick me up. And then I also brought matcha tea. So I brought matcha to improve my energy levels because I didn't really sleep well the night before, you know, just general nervousness. Also brought snacks because my exam was at 11 a.m. and I hadn't had lunch then. So I brought 2 Cliff bars and a protein bar, but I only ended up eating about like half of my Cliff bar. I also brought water. So my mindset going into the exam was that I kept telling myself, you know, I don't need to be the best. I don't need to get every question correct. I just need to do well enough to pass. And that was quite reassuring to me. I also told myself, if the computer keeps going after 75 questions, that means that it's not sure whether, like, where my abilities are at. And that means that I'm still fighting to pass. And so I need to concentrate and really focus on each question and do my best in order to pass this test. And so these were thoughts that I kept repeating to myself throughout the exam. And I think it really helped me to stay focused because I knew that, like, I know the material. I just need to calm myself down enough to be able to do it, to be able to pass the test. And honestly, at the beginning of taking the exam, I was quite nervous. But then, like, slowly, as you do more and more questions, I just felt like I was sitting at home doing questions on UWorld. So yeah, it was kind of a pretty chill experience. Yeah, so everything turned out all right. So immediately after the exam, I felt really relieved and I kind of forgot all about it. I hung out with my family that night and then just relaxed, watched movies and stuff. And then the next morning, I got my result at 7 a.m. that I passed. So yeah, that's basically everything to do with how I studied for the NCLEX and prepared for it. If you have any questions, please leave a comment. And thank you so much for watching. I hope this was helpful. And I'll see you in my next video. Bye!